Good morning. How are you all? Welcome to Music Love's first event. It's great to have you all here as part of Vivid Ideas. Thank you so much for coming. Before we get started, I need to get this right. I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. Okay, so I'm Julie Kerr. I'm an artist and I founded musiclove.com.au last year in November. I felt like it would be a good opportunity to have a platform where women can feel like they're part of a community, but also that mainstream people outside of Australian women in music could also have a little look into our lives as musicians and industry people. And I cannot believe in the last 7 or 8 months how much traction we've got and how much people want to have such a platform. So that's really exciting, and I think it says a lot about the Australian music industry that there's an appetite there. And I think as long as we're all supporting and celebrating each other, we can really, make sure that more and more women feel included and people want to have jobs in the arts and just kind of cultivate that community. So it's an honour to do it. My own journey, just so you get some context, I started in music when I was a little kid, like most people who started in music, and then I moved to Sydney from the Central Coast when I was 21, and that was a long time ago now, and I would do the sort of pub circuit around Newtown and kind of do support acts for like Jenny Morris and Vicar and Linda Bull and Australian artists like that. And then as I got more and more serious and recorded an EP and everything, I had a label meet with me and say that they wanted to put me on Neighbours, that I needed to increase my profile. And so I joined a little advertising, like a little television agency, and I hated it because I'm an introverted artist. So I thought, this isn't for me. Did a charity gig, ended up studying political science and journalism because I thought it was a real job, and then started doing freelance writing, and I was trained very much in my writing by Mia Freedman back in the early days of mamamia.com.au, and I started writing for a few women's media publications and also a lot in global poverty space as well, and having children along the way, so kind of mixing it up. And then in 2011 I completely decided to throw music away. My father died, my uncle died, and my 7-year-old niece died within 3 months of each other, so I was very low. And I decided to throw music away, and 1 year later I got a phone call out of the blue in the middle of the night, and I heard this voice say, "Hello, you don't know me, but you may know of me. My name is Jermaine Jackson." And it was Jermaine Jackson of the Jackson 5, and I was like, "Hello, Jermaine, how are ya?" It's midnight. He's like, "I've been trying to call you for 3 days. I don't know how to dial out of America. Do you know how to make an international call? I feel so embarrassed." He found one of my songs on the internet, a film. I had a music film on the internet, a music video, and he said, "Who are you? You're a great songwriter. Send me your music. My sons are in development, write for me, rah, rah, rah." So that was in 2012, and 5 years later, we're still in contact. I went to meet him in LA. He came over with his brothers to tour Australia, and my husband and I, who were dating at the time, went on tour with them, and it was just great. And I got that boost again, and so I ended up recording again and starting out again. So you never know what can happen in the music biz. So I'm very inspired to just keep people inspired and to, anything can happen. Even if you're having a bad day, you don't know what could happen the next day, just keep going. All right, but first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Iluka. She's a wonderful artist from Sydney's northern beaches, I want to say. Come up. She's been on tour with Killing Heidi, who reformed. And she played Melbourne last night? Yes. And she's come up here today to play for us, and then she's going to jet set off to Brisbane for another gig tonight. So thank you so much, Nikki. What are you singing for us today?
I'm going to sing a song off an EP I just released called Blue My Soul. And I just want to say thank you to Julie for putting this on. Thank you. I'm so honoured to be part of this. Thank you.
Thanks.
this old house waits. Radio plays, and that Cheshire man who lives down the way. He plays piano real loud today, but you're singing from the rooftop. Oh, let it burn, and you're waking all the kids up. Oh, let it burn, and the drumming when it won't stop. Oh, let it burn, oh, let it burn. Dizzying clamor of city heights, the liquor lips and the death of Friday nights. Oh, from this madness softly, let I pray you remember me when you see a thundered and oh magnificent sorrow. Thank you so much.
It's incredible. I know you have to leave before we finish, so I've got a little gift. It's nothing much, but thank you for doing today. Safe travels. Thanks, Nikki. How's her voice? First thing in the morning, just nails it. All right, I'd love our panellists to come forward now. Come and take your seats. We have Vicki Gordon with us today and Dr. Rita Cruz. We have Christy Lee Peters, known as KLP, and Jacqui. I do not know how to say your last name. And Shefali Pryor from the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. So come and have a seat. All the way over there.
That was a beautiful intro.
Okay, so we have seats assigned to us and numbers, so everyone's counting. All right, I wanted to have a diverse range of women and their roles in the music industry. And so we've got a lot to cover today, but I just thought I would start by asking each panellist to introduce themselves to you in their own words. So how about we start with you, Shefali?
Okay, first off the rank. My name's Shefali. I'm the Associate Principal Oboe with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. I'm also the Artistic Director of our Vanguard program, which is a philanthropic membership program that we target at younger audiences, trying to generate new audiences and interest in the orchestra by taking us outside of the concert hall and putting us into new contexts, playing in unexpected venues like a car park or a train station, and trying to show that there's a lot more to the orchestra than suits and serious faces on the stage, which is also a wonderful part of what we do. I'm also a teacher at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, and I am a director on the board of the Australian Youth Orchestra, which is a wonderful, wonderful organisation that has fostered such a high proportion of Australian musicians. I'm really used to playing in that building over there in front of large audiences, but I'm not used to talking, so you have to forgive me a few notes. When I think about my trajectory as a musician, I think that I see three really strong points. The incredible support of my parents and my family, which came in the form of time, money, encouragement, and sort of support no matter what choice I felt I wanted to make. I really owe a lot to the incredible structures in place in music education in Australia in terms of the local, state and national youth orchestra training program, because I think if we're going to lock ourselves in a practice room for hours at a time, we need to have a motivation and inspiration behind that. And for me, that was always came from playing with other people, from the feeling of playing in an orchestra, which was a buzz that I had from the first day and still have every time I turn up to work. And I also have a lot to owe to colleagues who showed faith in me before I knew to have faith in myself, because sometimes you don't know you can do something until you try, and certainly for me it took me a long time for my confidence to catch up to where I was in my career often. So I grew up in Sydney. I had a musical upbringing in the sense that music was a large part of my family home. We had music on the radio. My mum is a devoted Sibelius fan. I can still sort of picture myself in the kitchen with the radio blaring. I remember my first Sydney Symphony concert when I was in primary school, and I can still picture myself in that chair in the Sutherland Entertainment Centre being completely sort of captivated, even though the kids around me perhaps weren't so much. And at the same time as that, we were doing group recorder classes in my primary school. And in hindsight, the idea of 800 recorder children in the opera house playing together is kind of horrifying. But at the time, it was a really, really sort of a turning point in developing a love of playing music. So I was part of these instrumental festivals run by the education department with literally a choir of 800 recorder players, which led me to ask my mum, can I play an instrument? I wanted to play a wind instrument. I didn't know which one. I don't think I even knew what the oboe was. And she played me records of different pieces of music she had at home, and one of them was an oboe concerto. So I chose the oboe, and she said, when you get to high school. And I nagged, and I got to high school, and I still wanted to do it. And that's how I came to pick it up for the first time. The oboe is a little bit of a tricky beast of an instrument. It's it comes with its own challenges. We have these particular reeds that are very finicky, and as you get farther in your career, you need to make them yourself. And it's also quite difficult physically to play at the start. I liken it to trying to blow up a very small balloon. It's sort of that level of air pressure, which is why we often look like we're struggling a little bit. So when I started out, we were looking for an oboe teacher, and we spoke to a man at the Wollongong Conservatorium and asked him, do you think she'll be able to do it? I was quite small for my age, and my mum mentioned that I was really stubborn, and he said, oh, she'll be fine. Well, that's all you need, I think. And I think in the music industry, you need a lot of perseverance, and you need to put your head down and sometimes just keep on working even though you don't know what's going to happen. I used to say you've got to close your eyes and jump and hope that you land somewhere that you want to go. And so, despite having always had a fascination with science. I got to the end of high school and the only thing that I wanted to do was play in an orchestra, which was a very impractical career path. When I told people about it, they said, "Can you do that for a job?" But I went to the Conservatorium of Music and I had wonderful teachers in the form of Charmin Pretty, who was the dean of the con at the time, and Alexandre Gay, who is the cor anglais player with the orchestra and is now a very good friend and colleague. And I really benefited from inspirational mentors participating in Australian Youth Orchestra programs, and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra training program. So I really am a product of a very strong trajectory of orchestral training in this country, which is unique for Australia. It's not so common. My time is running out, I think.
I think it's out. But we'll get back to some of those things that you were talking about in our topics. But that was a wonderful introduction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Shefali. Okay, I'm going to mix it up and jump straight to Jacqui now. I don't know. We don't have to do things in order, do we? This is Jacqui.
I'm the one with the impossible surname. So my maiden name is Louez, and then I married the great love of my life, Louis, who has a Dutch surname, which is pronounced Schoorl. So I went from Jacqueline Samantha Louez to Jacqueline Samantha Louez Schoorl. And 13 years we've been together, and I still find it hard to pronounce, as does everybody else. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Jackster. We completed our beta testing in February, and we will be going live in September. And what we're building is, if you think about something that you're looking for online, most of us Google it. If you want to look for something in music in the future, you'll Jackster it. I'd also like to clarify, I have not named the business after myself. My husband came after the name, and it's a play on the album jacket that used to come with the vinyl.
Right.
So if you think about the vinyl experience, you'd open up the album jacket and you'd be able to find out who was the oboe player, who mixed or mastered the album, who were the songwriters, who was the backing vocalist. And you know, back in the 1800s, the Edison cylinder had this information. And in 2017, on most streaming services and digital services, you can't find that information. I started my career in the film industry where credits are everything. And in our business, you know, credits are often how you actually get your next gig. You might start as a backing vocalist and work your way up, or you might start as an engineer. Today's engineer is tomorrow's Imogen Heap. You just don't know. So for me, credits are incredibly important. And what we're doing is we're working with the custodians of those liner notes and label copy by working with record labels, publishers, industry associations to get that information directly from the source. And we're building what will be one of the largest databases in the world of that information. So when Julie was talking about how Jermaine didn't know how to get in contact with her in the future, he'd be able to go to Jackster.com, type in Julie's name, and if he has a Jackster Pro account, he'll be able to click on your representation. So that's part of my journey in music. In 2014, I started the Women in Music Sydney networking group. Interestingly, Julie, I started it after my father passed away. Wow. It was one of the things that, I don't know, when you have a life experience like that, sometimes it's the massive motivation you need to really, I don't know, take that next bold step. I had read a book by Sheryl Sandberg called Lean In, which I had found very inspiring. And I thought it would be really good to just get a group of my amazing girlfriends in the music industry together to have a natter. And that's how it started with 40 women. And now I think we have over 600 in our community on Facebook.
Wow, amazing.
And we have over 300 women on our mailing list. And we do these wonderful events called In Conversation With, and we do 4 of them a year, where we'll get someone like FIFA Riccobono, who's the former CEO of Albert's Music. I mean, she worked with AC/DC and the Easy Beats and Billy Thorpe, like amazing human being. And she'll talk to us very openly and honestly about her career. You know, what are the wins? What do the losses feel like? How do you pick yourself up? So we do about 4 of those events a year, and usually one cracker of a Christmas party at Christmas time. So they're really the 2 things that I'm working on now in music. I'd previously worked as a label manager at EMI. For a period of time also too, I really ran my husband's recording studio. He's the co-founder of Jackster with me. He's a multi-award-winning songwriter, record producer, and as I said previously, the love of my life. He's pretty awesome. KLP can vouch for that because she's worked with Louis. I'm very biased, as you can see, and proud. But yeah, I grew up with music as well. I mean, when I was born, well, actually before I was born, when I was in my mum's belly, my mum took me to so many concerts. And I think in the course of my life, I've missed one John Farnham concert because I inherited my mum's love of the big JF. So I was in her belly listening to John Farnham, and then when I came home, they played Stevie Wonder immediately. My father was a drummer, my mother was an amateur jazz singer, I've married a music man. I have inherited none of their skills or talent, but a deep love for the industry, and I am a firm believer that it's a part of our DNA, and I believe that everybody's fluent in 2 languages, their native tongue and music. There is nothing that can bring people together as quickly as music. All you have to do is hear one chord and you can feel elated, you can feel heartbroken, you can feel connected. There was a beautiful example of this actually when Nelson Mandela passed away. I remembered seeing this on CNN. There were 4 warring African tribes that all descended on his family compound, and these tribes had been at absolute war with each other. And they all started singing, and they'd never had this experience together because they'd always been at war. And in that moment, they all harmonised and they were singing their own national tribe or their own tribe song. And the thing is, they'd never done that before, and as fate would have it, with the 4 of them singing, they harmonised. And I'll never forget the CNN reporter bursting into tears on live television, as was I at home. So I just feel it's something that connects all of us, and it has the ability to do so very quickly.
Beautiful. Isn't she wonderful? Thanks, Jacqui. All right, Vicki. This is Vicki Gordon sitting next to me. She's wonderful too.
Oh, thank you. Great. Look, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we stand on today and pay my respect to their elders past, present and future. And I particularly want to thank you, Julie, and Music Love for convening this event this morning. I started playing the guitar when I was 8 years old. I'm a New Zealand Māori woman, and I started to learn music. Really, I came from a broken family, and music was really the thing that kept me alive. It was actually the thing that saved my life, quite frankly. At the age of 19, I left New Zealand with $300 in my guitar, and I came to Australia to try and get a job in the Australian music industry, and I'm still here working today. In my career, I've done many things in the industry, from obviously being a musician, running record labels. I ran the label that signed Vanessa Amorosi when she was 15, and we went on to sell 7 times platinum albums, and her single, her crazy song, Absolutely Everybody, was top 5 in 29 countries around the world. Apart from being a record label manager and working as a music director, I then was the first woman voted onto the board of ARIA in 50 years in 2002, and there's never been another woman on that board since then. In my capacity as an ARIA board director, I also chaired the Australian Music Initiative, which was, and I really tried for about 7 years to try and get more independent artists onto commercial radio. Radio then was really pivotal to an artist's career. I'm not sure that it's so pivotal now, but it certainly was then. An independent artist, and certainly Australian artists, were not given the voice or the presence that they deserve, and probably still aren't. I then went on, at that time I also became very aware of the lack of women in the Australian music industry, working on the business side, working in technical areas, on the boards of our major and independent peak bodies, and in leadership roles. When we think about women in the music industry, we usually think about musicians and singer-songwriters, and we kind of forget about what's going on behind the scenes, and who are those people that are making the decisions about how we look, how we present ourselves, how we're perceived by the broader industry. So I established a not-for-profit called Australian Women's Contemporary Music to improve the status of Australian women in the Australian music industry. And in that capacity, I produced Australia's first Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Women's Contemporary Music Festival, the first training program for female DJs, and the first all-girl rock festival in Australia. And I also started some research. because one of the area of women in contemporary music is the least researched area of women in the arts. And without actual research, we have no capacity to fight. We really have no capacity to stand up and say, these are the stats, this is where women are or are not represented, this is where our cultural brothers and sisters around, Indigenous brothers and sisters are represented or are not. We have nothing to reflect on. So I started collecting research, and that organisation wound down after about 8 years, mainly due to lack of funding. But all of the details and all of my papers in relation to that research are now with the New South Wales State Library. I then went on to work as a music producer. I work now a lot with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists. I see music as a very healing, a vehicle for healing for many, many people, and I see it in my life all the time, and I see it change people's lives. I work very solidly now in the area of gender and cultural equity, and I do a lot of lobbying for women and cultural diversity in the Australian music industry. So I spend all of my days actually speaking with government, state and federal, lobbying politicians, speaking with women practitioners around the country, travelling, setting up, organising groups where women and those that are interested in inclusivity in the music industry can come together to basically talk about what we need to do to create real change in the music industry, not just tokenistic change. I'm currently founding the Australian Women in Music Awards and Conference, which I'm hoping to produce in Queensland next year. And the idea behind that is to I really think that this conversation I'm having with you, I've been having for 30 years. I can speak very clearly because I've repeated it so many times. I believe that what we need to do is put the value of the contribution of women back on the table, and we really, really need to become far more active about trying to create a more inclusive industry. And that is not just that's not just about meetings. That's actually about creating an environment to determine policy, to create advocacy, to move our position forward. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Vicki. Sitting next to Vicki is KLP. Do we call you KLP?
Well, KLP is just my initials, so Christy Lee Peters. It's, a lot more simple once you figure that out. It's more sounding. So I have been obsessed with music and entertaining and performing ever since I was really little. I was lucky that I had a dad that was a musician and that ran a studio, so I was never a kid that, had parents saying, you're going to have to get a real job one day, because to me, that was the job you get, because that was what my dad did. I went to Newtown High School of the Performing Arts and was involved in every single possible thing I could do. I was constantly just going for auditions, not even knowing what they were for. Through doing that, I became a member of a girl group, essentially, signed to Sony Music when I was 13.
What was that called?
Real Blondes.
Oh, wow.
Feel free to look it up. Someone's put up 2 very amazing video clips online.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
I thought I was going to be the Spice Girls. It was an amazing experience. And so I guess at a young age, I had to learn and deal with the idea of something ending, which I think has been a massive plus for me, because at 16, I wasn't the Spice Girls, and I had to go back to school, and I had to become a normal kid again, and I thought I was a failure, and my dad was kind of like, no, that's just what happens. You're going to have to be really resilient if you want to be in the industry, and things are going to change. You'll have to develop and, grow and pick up the pieces and keep going on. And I think it's been a great experience to have from a young age, because not only did I have my first dealings with record labels, touring, performing, videos, but I also learnt to deal with that idea of going, all right, that's over. What am I going to do next? So since then, I've constantly been doing that. I've always been a fan of songwriting, and I guess because my dad was a writer, I've written songs from literally as far back as I can remember. And I wanted to be a songwriter not only for myself, but for other people. I found out there was a thing called a publisher that could help you. So my approach to many things was cold calling and emailing any contact forms I could get, getting turned back. No one wanted to sign me. Since uploaded some music to Triple J Unearthed and won a competition to play at Field Day. And then after that, got a call from one of the people that had turned me down saying, I just heard your song on the radio. Have you ever thought about writing for people? To which I went, yes! Here's a spreadsheet with all the songs I've written. So I got signed as a songwriter. That's how I met Louez and Jacqui. So have since written around the world and with lots of other people, but then also for myself, as well as then scoring a job on Triple J because I DJ. I got signed to EMI as an artist and was releasing music. So I travel around pretty much every weekend playing music, singing, DJing, writing, doing radio. And my most recent thing that I've started is my own record label. So I actually left the major label because I thought, hey, I can do that. I can fund it myself. And so I've just started that. So I've had my first release and continuously obsessed with not getting a day job.
That's great. Isn't she great? Christy performed last night at Sydney Eye Tower.
Yes, I
Up
did.
high.
Yeah, it's a great view.
And finally, we've got Dr. Rita Cruz, who it's such a pleasure to have you here. I'll let you introduce yourself. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie. Well, I'm a little bit overwhelmed now after hearing all these wonderfully musically successful stories from these ladies, because I come from a completely and utterly different atmosphere, if you like, a different planet almost. But let me firstly say that I really am delighted to be here today and to take part in this. I've been on lots of panels over the years, but this one's quite different, with a completely different group of people, and I'm really pleased to be here. I'll probably I'll give you some stories that are quite different from what you've just heard. So I do need my notes. Being the elder member of this particular troop, well, I didn't start off with any kind of music career in mind at all. That wasn't on my purview. The only thing I ever wanted to do was medicine. That's where I wanted to go, but it didn't happen. But I did attend a primary school in those days that had a very interesting music program, and we learned to play the keyless flute.
Wow.
Keyless flute, right? So at least I could learn to read the treble clef, if nothing else. So, I did that from about a young age. I also, I liked it so much, and I was actually quite good at it. So I became the leader of the flute band. This is back, I'm talking over 60 years ago here, right? I'm very old. We used to walk around the streets of Ashfield on Empire Day. Now, I don't know if anybody here actually knows what Empire Day is. It was the 24th of May, that's right. We don't celebrate that anymore, obviously. We had a half-day holiday from school. So the flute band used to walk around the streets, and I was the leader, and I had my whistle. And that was wonderful, because I could play my whistle. Okay, so I did a couple of years of learning piano in my teens, but I gave it up because I was an awful player. I'm not a performer by any means. I had absolutely and utterly no parental encouragement whatsoever, which is quite different from what some of these girls are saying. In fact, I can remember when I was writing this out, I thought, memories come back to you, and I could remember my mother standing in the kitchen, and she'd scream out, "Wrong! Wrong! Wrong!"
Wow.
Well, I mean, who would want to keep learning after that sort of experience? And my father, because she was only just going to learn piano, bought a piano with a broken iron frame. Now, if you know anything about, as I do now, pianos with broken iron frames, they can't be tuned. So therefore, I had no ear, I still have no ear, all the rest of it. But that's okay. Well, that's how it happened. So, moving on, I left school after what was then called the Leaving Certificate. And again, probably nobody else knows what that means. Do you? Oh, there you go. It was several years before the HSC had come in. I failed that, by the way. I didn't pass that exam at all because I'd fallen in love. And you can't fall in love when you're 17 and doing the Leaving Certificate. It just doesn't work, so forget that. So I actually earned my pay packet by in dentistry. I was in dentistry for, I don't know, over 20 years all up, I think, during my lifetime. I did a couple of more years of piano a bit later on. I did a year of singing, and my singing teacher used to give me my music back, and she'd say, "Keep singing, dear." Told you a lot. Okay, so let's just fast forward to 1971. That's when I married And my husband's sister, my sister-in-law, was a high school music director, and maybe she saw something because she persuaded me to take up music seriously, which I sort of did because I was never a performer. So, but I did find that I could teach, and I could teach with some success. I think there's a couple of people here that actually know that. I pursued the life of a studio teacher. I was still in dentistry at the same time, and I got on with some qualifications. I did my accreditation as a studio teacher. In those days, you used to do it through the con. And eventually, and I was 32 when I enrolled at the University of New England as an external student. It was the most wonderful, it still is a wonderful university, but in those days it was incredible. So I majored in musicology. I'm actually a musicologist. Majored in musicology and Australian history. So you can ask me about the Reverend Samuel Marsden and I'll tell you all about him. Not a nice man. Eventually then I went on and did a PhD on 3 Australian composers, 2 of whom were women, just analysing their piano music. So that was sort of, I'm coming more from the academic field. Well, I guess the upshot of all that is that I discovered I had a reasonably good grasp of the theoretical aspects of music. I'm not a performer, can't be, although about 12 years ago I took up the drums and I love it. That I can do. That I can do. I even do a gig now and again. All right, so moving right along, in 1988 I became an AMEB examiner in written subjects. Since then I've had a lot to do with syllabus development, training examiners, introducing new ideas, leading teams of examiners, taking on the role of chief examiner in all the written subjects for New South Wales and also for our federal AMEB. We have an online system there as well. About 35 years ago, I joined the Council of the Music Teachers Association, took on various roles, including vice president, and I've been president for the last 12 years, and I'm over 40 seconds. I have 2 seconds. And in 1990, I joined the board of the New South Wales AMEB under a particular system that was in operation at that time. I'm still there. I represent studio teachers, private music teachers. And in 98, I became deputy chair of the AMEB, a position that I still hold and probably will till I die because no one else wants it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to have you here with all of your wisdom and experience. And this week, ARIA announced their Music Teacher of the Year award, which I think is just wonderful because sometimes I feel like there's a separation between education and performance, so it's so intertwined though. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to talk about education and professional development to kick it off. We do have a lot to get through, so if I do speed things up or jump things along, it's because there are other things that we want to talk about as well. Obviously, each of these topics could be just talked about in a whole conference. We have like half an hour. Okay, so education. I want to know from the panel any stories that you might have of a music teacher or some kind of like organisation that really influenced your musicianship and you deciding. I mean, Shefali, you talked a lot about the different structures that are in place that helped you.
Yeah, I think when you come from sort of definitely a purely classical background, that Australia does have. Our National Youth Orchestra is quite a unique organisation on a world scale, and there is a trajectory that I followed and that many students do, though it's not by no means the only way. But when you start out by having a kind of a regular involvement in ensemble playing, so many of the skills that we're learning on our own with the instrument are sort of heightened or helped along by the skills you learn playing with other people, because you're learning how to listen and play together, and that's what we all want to do anyway. So participating in youth orchestra, I mean, that was really the drug that got me addicted to playing the oboe. And I was very lucky that I had some very inspirational mentors from the orchestras within Sydney who were my teachers and really just told me stories and about what they were doing and really kind of captivated me with this world that they were a part of.
Yeah, that's amazing. How important or do you think it is for us to recognise the extra time that goes into music is considered extracurricular, like it's not, you have to do your other homework and your other assignments and everything growing up, and then does anyone want to talk about that, the extra time, and they felt like, oh, I'm putting so many hours into this?
It's been a long time since I left high school. Is it still extracurricular now today? Excuse my ignorance. It is?
I think there's an attitude, not everywhere, and I was lucky I went to a performing arts high school, and, you know, same as you, I had parents that saw it as a viable career, but I'm an APRA ambassador, and I travel around to a lot of schools around Australia doing music workshops with their Songmakers program, and one of the questions I ask is, hands up if your parents don't think that music is a career. And everyone's like, yeah. No one thinks it's a serious job, and I'm not just talking about being a performer, but I'm talking about all the background, you know, jobs, all the jobs that aren't even created yet, like Jacqui, you know, and I think that there's a view that needs to be changed so that it's not considered extracurricular, that it's seen as like a viable thing. For a lot of kids, they don't even realise that you can be a manager, an agent, a publisher, a record, a teacher, or, you know.
Yeah.
But perhaps even going back a step further or a step backwards from that, the way it's structured now in schools is that they don't have to do music. It's not compulsory. It is extracurricular. It's up to the principal, you know, whether the students can actually do music or not, which I think is pretty awful, because you think back to what I said when I was, you know, 6 and 7 years old. We were doing music in primary school. That's all finished.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of schools that do it, but a lot don't. And in fact, and I probably shouldn't say it, we're trying to get some changes made, in fact, so that music becomes part of every school. And this is what should happen. So when you see some publicity coming about that, please put your hand up and say, yes, I agree. Because that's the problem. Music isn't considered to be, it's just that thing you do after school, or, you know, the 10-year-old next door teaches you. Well, I'll talk about that later.
Well, I have an interesting statistic to add to that. Ernst & Young did a report in 2015 called the Cultural Creative Industries Report, and there are 3.9 million individuals in the top 20 markets of the world that make their Monday to Friday living from the music industry.
Wow.
And there are 15 million people in the wider music industry who make their living from the music industry. And that's everything from roadies to A&R managers at record labels. So it's not just artists. We'd be nowhere without them. The rest of the industry actually wouldn't have a job if we didn't have the creatives. But there's so much more to music. I mean, listen, I don't have a musical bone in my body. So there are so many other aspects to this industry, and it's not just about being a singer, although, you know, it'd be great to do that.
I think we're also challenged by the culture we live in, which is diminished and slashing of funding for the arts and for the creatives across the board.
Absolutely.
And as a result of Australia really being very remiss and I think ignorant about the contribution of creatives, and feeling justified in slashing our creative industries, I think that we're going to get a trickle down and a filtering effect in relation to all areas of industry, particularly for musicians, when we're seeing many small to medium organisations shutting their doors now because there is no support for them. So that's a greater, I can't talk about music education at all, but I do think we have some really serious conversations we need to have here in Australia about why we can make more money kicking a football around a football field than we do by being a creative artist.
And, you know, on that point, just really quickly, if you compare us to the States or the UK, and you think about our extraordinary history as a nation of music, I mean, you just think, I know everyone here can come up with 5 people they know who are incredible in the Australian music industry. For the first time, we're about to get our first museum of music in Australia. It's happening in Melbourne, and it's called the Vault. You know, but that's long overdue. We should have had a museum 20 years ago. You know, more. There's obviously, you know, go to Canberra, and we you know, there are museums for everything except music. And we have an incredible history as a nation.
Yes.
You know, from AC/DC to Kylie Minogue to In Excess. I mean, there's, oh my gosh, Sia, Gotcha, the list goes on.
Barnsey.
Hey.
Vicki, in an Indigenous context, I mean, education, like, that is a whole different thing to talk about in an Indigenous context. But what about in terms of music and, like, do you have any insights into?
Well, look, I'm not an Indigenous person to this
No.
country, and it's difficult for me to talk about
Yep.
that, really. And I'm not going to talk about that on behalf of Indigenous people. But I do think that we need to pay more attention to the contribution of our Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander artists and our culturally diverse artists in this industry who really, when you look at the face of the industry, do not have a presence, other than those that you might know more in the commercial world. But I work extensively with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists all across the country, and I also run a charity to empower Indigenous and marginalised and disadvantaged Indigenous and women and youth. So I think the most important thing for us as an industry is when we talk about our rich musical history, we also need to think about our rich musical Indigenous history, which so often gets overlooked in these conversations. And that's all I'd say, really.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I want to move on now to, like, what it actually looks like to work in music, like your day-to-day life, because I guess I just want to sort of demonstrate how different everyone's role is and how diverse it is. We're sort of not all rehearsing like Shefali or, you know, writing papers like Dr. Rita. You know, so whoever wants to go first, just spend a minute talking about what does your day look like or your week look like? What do you do when you wake up on Monday morning and...
Jump in here. As I say, I'm not coming from a performer arena, so I'm talking about studio teachers, and you've probably all been taught by a studio teacher, private music teacher, and it's very difficult. I don't know one single private music teacher in all the years that I've been doing this who can make a living, a full-time living out of music teaching, because you can't, because it's after school or it's 7:30 in the morning. Then you have to get a real job for the rest of the day, or you're married and you know your partner's the one that goes out to work and you're just at home doing this home industry. We're trying to get that changed. It's a sort of a historical perspective that learning an instrument is just something you do. Well, what about the person who teaches you? How does she or he make an actual living? It's very, very difficult. And if I may say this, one of the other difficulties that we have in that is that there are unqualified, probably the majority, I think, Denise, the majority of people who teach will be unqualified. Parents don't worry about that. Oh, that's okay, it's just the kid next door that I'm paying her $5 for a lesson. Can you go into a high school, can you go into a classroom and teach without being qualified, without having any training? You can't. So all you young people, or if you've got youngsters, your own, just look for the qualifications of the person, because this is how we can extend our profession to make it more professional. This is what we've been trying to do for years.
That's great. Christy, do you feel like your job is inherently after hours?
No, my job
Okay.
is, I mean, look at
All
today.
hours.
It's literally all hours.
Yeah.
My day is never the same. I rarely have a day off. Sometimes it's a dream and I love it, but then other times, like today, for example, it's, you know, a bit of a logistical nightmare and I'll probably get about 3 hours sleep in the space of 24 hours and fly to Brisbane and back. Yeah, it changes all the time, from writing to doing this, to having meetings, to answering emails, to planning sets, to producing music, to doing the radio. It's never the same, and I don't know what I'll be doing in a year's time.
So what about, like, if you feel like I need some downtime, do you feel guilty if you take that time away because you think I could be doing something else?
Well, I think if you run your own business, it's hard because there's always something else you could do. You know, if I have a day off, I'm like, oh, but I could probably create something else. I've got a day off. What can I do? And I guess it's a blessing and a curse, but hopefully it's overall a blessing, because what you're doing is making a living from a passion, which is always better. If you can, you know, earn a living from a passion and a skill like music or some kind of skill in the industry, you're going to make more money and you're just going to be happier.
Yeah. And Jacqui, you're running an office, so what does your life look like each week?
At the moment, my life is absolutely hectic. So my day on a bad day will start, well, by bad day, all days are good, but it'll start at 5:30 in the morning because I need to get the tail end of New York and sort of try and get LA before it becomes early afternoon. So I'll get up, the first thing I do, which I know is kind of toxic, I'll check my emails, make sure there's nothing really urgent, and then I'll meditate, and then I do emails for about 45 minutes before I jump in the shower. I try to get into the office between 8 and 8:30 because I've usually got a conference call most mornings actually at like 7 o'clock, and then my meetings normally start from 8:30, and I will do, when I'm in Sydney, minimum of 6 meetings a day. I probably get on average anywhere from 175 to 200 emails a day, on top of meetings, on top of phone calls. And I don't work until 11 o'clock at night, but I'm definitely checking emails again before I go to bed because New York's woken up again. And at the moment, I'm working Monday. When I'm in Australia, I work Monday through Saturday. That doesn't mean that I'm working all day Saturday, but it's America's Friday. And when I'm in the States, I love Friday because it's Saturday in Australia. So Australia doesn't wake up because when I'm in America, I do 2 full days. So I'll do the whole American day, and then I'll do the whole of the Australian day. So when the Australian office is going to bed, that's when I'm finally going to bed. But that said, it's not forever. I'm running my own business. I asked for this. And even on days, like I had a moment yesterday where something happened and I mentally said to myself, FML. And then I was like, but actually there's nothing else that I would like to do. I love it. I really, really, really do love it. But I think it's crucially important to know when to put the oxygen mask on yourself. And there are some days where you just need to be in the fetal position with a tub of Ben & Jerry's watching Netflix and nothing can come between you. Because I also think it's really important to remember, and we had a situation in the office 2 days ago where a couple of us, myself included, made a mistake. And it was not a good one, and we recovered from it. But at the end of the day, we're not curing cancer. It's a music tech startup and it needs to be put in perspective. Everything's relative. I was annoyed the mistake was made and I was part of it as well, so I had to own it with the team. But you've got to remember that, you know, what's mission critical and what can you move to the side. But putting that oxygen mask on yourself is crucially important, and that's why I like to watch mind-numbing reality television sometimes. Because it's the only thing I can do when my brain switches off. It's not intelligent. I don't care. It works for me.
That's what I do.
Housewife. Yes. Love it.
Jacqui, what are you doing, like in your meetings? What are you talking about? Like, what do you feel like I'm constantly on this right now?
Like KLP, I think one of the things that's the biggest challenge is I'll be on a conference call with, say, our lawyers in New York discussing the capital structure of our business because we're in the middle of a raise. Then I'll speak to the development team about where we're up with our build on the platform and what's our tech stack right now. So what software are we moving from? Then I'll have a logistical meeting with Lucy and Leon. We'll be talking about admin roles. Then a project we're working on. Then there might be a meeting to discuss women in music. Then I might be meeting with the design team because we're looking right now at potential change of our logo, mild. But so what happens is my brain is going from capital structure to conversation with an investor to, platform development to women in music to, marketing materials, the fact that we might be sponsoring something. Okay, what's our activation going to be there? So it's constantly flicking your brain from one subject to another. I get home at night and sometimes my mum will call me about, Mum, I've got nothing in the tank. Because I'm just completely mentally got like cactus. I can't even speak some days.
Yeah, you're amazing.
No, I think everyone's operating at that high level. You know, we were all kind of flipping our brains from one corner to the other.
Vicki, you have a very long biography and a long list of things that you do. How do you structure your week?
Because of the advocacy involved in the work that I do, which really is about trying to create a more inclusive industry, a lot of my work is involved in writing applications, dealing with budgets, dealing with politicians, dealing with, government groups, etc., etc. I also spend a lot of time talking with musicians and talking with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists that I work with, and paying musicians, actually, because a big part of my job as a producer, when I'm working as a creative producer, is to find the money to create the projects and to move the ideas forward, but to also then pay the artists that are a part of those projects. So it's really great when I'm actually able to pay musicians or pay artists for the work that they do, because money's not easy to find in our industry. I also spend a lot of time in terms of governance, because I run a charity and I also run a production company. So the governance is really important in terms of being answerable to my board directors, but also making sure that all of that administration that I'm on top of all of that. And those of you that run your own businesses or even are involved in your own independent ventures know how important it is to do all of that. I think I'm also producing an Indigenous musical this year at Belvoir Street Theatre, co-producing. And so I'm fully engaged always with the musicians involved in that project, and then the production process, which is always about scheduling and timetables and all that sort of thing, everything that you would know about. So I'm very fortunate. I live upstairs from the building that my office is in, so I get up in the morning and walk downstairs. And I've also structured my life so that I also work between Sydney and the South Coast. So I love the Australian bush, and I love this is the most beautiful country. So when things get too much for me, and they often do because I carry a lot, I go to the bush, and I'll go out and I'll go to the beach, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll go out into nature. And Australia is so incredibly extraordinary in that way. So that's how I've structured my life. So my sanity really is Mother Nature, and the music industry is the mayhem that I create for myself.
Shefali, what does your week look like? It's probably, is it as structured, not less? Is it less structured or more structured? Or
It's very structured in many ways, in the sense that in about August or September every year we get a roster for the next year, and so I generally, by the end of one year, I know exactly what I have to do with the orchestra for the rest of the next year to follow. It's very unstructured in a way that, because every week is different. We generally have a new project every week, and we start with rehearsals and we round up the week with concerts, sort of on a general level. And then I think, obviously my days are quite different. There's a statistic about, I think, 10,000 hours you need to put into attaining a skill, and definitely feel like that. But once you arrive in the job, it's not like you've got it tied up and you can rest then. It really takes a lot of effort to maintain those skills, and in reality the standard of the orchestra is always improving, so you need to be improving to sort of keep up with what's going on around you. So I do find the more hats I wear outside of the orchestra, by being involved with more management or philanthropy related projects, I love them and I think they're incredibly important, but they are a distraction, and I'm having to be increasingly conscious of making time to practice, because that's the work I have to do. It's like eating my greens. If I don't do that, then I can't turn up to rehearsal feeling good in myself, and I feel like I'm letting down my colleagues. And a little like Vicki, I increasingly find a lot of solace in getting away from technology because even as a practicing performer, I'm not paid for emails, but I still tend to spend a lot of time doing them. So I was just down on the South Coast for a couple of days earlier this week, just so I could practice and be away from the distractions. Otherwise it's very hard to focus.
you touched on before making reads, and you said it really quickly, but it's actually a pain in the backside, because I talked to Diana Doherty, who is the principal oboist at Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and we did a podcast. Music Love has a podcast, that is a plug. And I spoke to Diana and I said, tell me about the oboe. And her face fell and she said, making reeds.
Sorry.
Tell us how you make a reed, like making your own reed from bamboo.
Okay, so the oboe is an instrument that works sort of essentially the same way if you get a piece of grass and you fold it in half and you buzz on it, and that makes a sound. So our reeds are actually one piece of cane that's folded over, tied onto a metal tube, cut off the top, you scrape it by hand to particular measurements, you see if it works. There are an incredible number of very fine parameters that can vary if it's 0.6 of a millimetre thick or 0.58 of a millimetre thick. This is the difference between many, many things. It changes. If you have a reed that works, you can express yourself, you can play your instrument. If you have a reed that doesn't work, you can't do anything. And the negative cloud is very hard to cope with. So really honestly, we start with a tube, we divide it in 3, we gouge it out to a certain thinness, we shape it, we tie it onto a metal tube. We do that, we have to leave it at every stage, we scrape it. It changes with the weather. So touring is a nightmare, because I've done a lot of touring with Australian Chamber Orchestra around the country, and if you go to Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth in 3 days, it's different. It's like playing a different instrument every time.
Do you have a toolkit, a little travel kit?
I do,
With
and
a little,
I have to be very careful to check it in my luggage every time I travel, because I remember at high school one year for my birthday, I got a knife for, a special reed making knife, and it's unusual. One of my colleagues, a violinist, once said to me, it's not fair. You have to be good at the oboe and you have to be good at craft.
Yes.
But it's kind of what it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I honour you for making your own reed. That's great. Wow, it's amazing. We are going to get to Q&A with all of you, so I hope you're thinking of some questions. But I really wanted to talk about how do we make money in the music industry, and talk about marketing and sales in that regards, and branding as well. So if anyone has any thoughts, I'll just open the panel up to talking about, in industry insights, like Jacqui, perhaps with Jackster, how is that, will that help a lot of musicians and actually bring money in? Yeah.
That's 100% the goal of Jackster. We operate, our motto really is, we have 2 mottos, the story behind the music and credit where credit's due. Coming from film, I started as a runner and then worked my way up to production assistant and then all the way up to producer. And the only way you can have that happen is if you have credit from the previous jobs you've done, because no one's going to hire you if you haven't had that experience. And being at the coalface of watching what Louez has gone through over the trajectory of his career, credits are everything. People are more inclined to go into a writing session with you if they know that you've done writing sessions before, and who have you done them with? Oh, you've worked with so-and-so. Okay, then, all right, well then let's get you in on a writing session as well. So the idea is that people will be able to know who's worked on what, and therefore reach out to them like Jermaine did with you, and the butterfly effect of that will be quite positive. We're also creating a new revenue stream because we're creating a payment for liner notes, which hasn't happened before. So that will go back to our data partners, and obviously our hope is that then gets transferred into artist and repertoire. But I think making a buck in any creative industry is challenging. KLP touched on it before. You have to have absolute resilience. I think proven by everyone sitting up here. You've got to have a passion and a love for it, because that drives the resilience and the hustle. But it takes a long time. Yeah. And it can be absolutely challenging. There's no question about that. I mean, with Jackster, I did 269 presentations over 2.5 years to the industry and prospective investors before we got a brave soul to invest in Jackster. Thank God they did. Wow. And, we've just now in year 4, after Music Biz in Nashville 2 weeks ago, we just completed our 1,100th presentation to the industry. So, it takes a lot of work, but Jackster wouldn't exist without our investors. And it was really hard for Louis and I for the first 2 years, because we were funding it off his production work, and You know, there's a fair amount of that going around, but not an enormous amount. And there are a lot of talented people in this industry producing it.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It takes a lot of hustle. And on several occasions, I've done 2 or 3 jobs at the same time.
Yeah.
From folding T-shirts at David Jones to waitressing to whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got to do working in retail. You've got to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vicki.
I think it's really important to have long-term plans and long-term goals, and I'm already working on projects and submissions to try and get funding for projects in 2020. So whilst I'm active and busy in the projects I'm working on today and this year, I'm actually already thinking about what I need to be doing in 4 or 5 years' time. And as an independent sort of practitioner, I think that's really, really important, and having long-term plans. And often we don't know often what's going to be thrown at us or what's going to come at us, or what great things are going to come around the corner. And it's very difficult, I think, to survive in the industry just doing one job. We all need to be incredibly flexible and able to do more than one thing to actually make money. If I wasn't able to make money in the other areas of my business, I certainly wouldn't be able to fight for cultural and gender equity, because there is no money in that at all, because the industry doesn't really want to invest in that as a particular kind of thing. So it's very important, I think, to have long-term goals and to be thinking years in advance, particularly if you want to have some kind of stability, which is very, very difficult for us in the creative industries to have stability.
Yeah.
And without stability, it can cause enormous personal anxiety. And I think many of us are dealing with that on a day-to-day basis.
Christy, I want to hear from you. It's 2017. You're very much, in my opinion, like the product of modern contemporary music and pop music. By the way, your new song, I was like, am I listening to Katy Perry in some spots? It's incredible. Yeah,
thanks.
Changes. That's a plug too. So do you have any insights into maybe perhaps branding or marketing yourself? I love the way you run your Instagram account and all of that.
Thanks. It's been interesting for me because I'm an employee of the ABC, so I can't be connected to any brands. There's so much income that can come from, and it can be awesome. There's things like Red Bull that really support artists and will kind of come to them and say, what do you need? Oh, you need a lighting show? We'll do it for you. They're really great with musicians. I can't do any of that while I'm an ABC employee. So I don't make any money from any brands or anything. I just have to do it all by myself. But it keeps everything very organic. And I make my income from so many different streams. There's obviously money from writing songs through APRA. I'm also an APRA ambassador, so I do workshops for them. DJing, singing live, Triple J. I'm trying to think of what else I do. Yeah, so many different things.
And you started your own label now.
Yeah, which is awesome because you make a lot more money from it. The only downside is you also have to fund it yourself. So at the moment, literally every single dollar that I make, I'm putting back into all my music.
And do you think a record label's sort of number one expense is marketing?
Nope.
What
My
do you
record
think it
label,
is?
ex-record label, did none of that.
Right.
I think it's case specific. It really depends, but I do think that everything is changing so dramatically right now. There's no right or wrong path for any artist, and I think that it's a scary thing to think that you need to be signed to a label in order to do something. Like, I'm not sure how to make it, but if I sign to a label, then someone thinks I'm good enough, and it's all going to happen. It doesn't necessarily happen like that. And there's so many resources out there at the moment to do it yourself.
Yeah.
From Triple J on Earth to the platform I use to put out a digital platform. There's numerous ones that will service your music around the world, and to Spotify, iTunes. And some of them are also, you don't pay a fee up front, so they're incentive based, so that you only pay them when they do work for you. It's amazing if you actually want to research it and switch your brain on and do it yourself. It can be really empowering. And for the independent artists that I know, they actually make more money doing it themselves from streaming, from sales, because you're getting it directly. If you sign to a label, you'd see generally.
Not much.
Generally, none of it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Would you please thank our panellists for our discussion just now? And I'd like to throw to you. We have a microphone, I think, Britt. This is the lovely Britt who organised these beautiful flowers today, helping out. So does anybody have any questions for any of our panellists? Oh, Britt, I'll let you choose.
Hiya. So this question is mainly for KLP, but anyone really. I was just wondering about creative blocks as kind of a classic. So how you, if you've come across them, how you get over them, pretty much.
Are you a writer yourself?
I sing.
Yeah.
But I just kind of a while back I did, but yeah, just want to get back into it.
Okay.
I think that creativity, it can kind of be like a muscle. So the more you train yourself to deal with those kind of things, the easier it gets. So I haven't had creative blocks for a while because I have all little techniques in place to go into writing sessions and be able to pull things up. So from writing conversations or lines into my phone to, really quickly being able to turn the word chair into something about sitting, about staying still, about not moving anywhere, so just little things like that. But then there's been books that I've read. There's one called The Writer's Way, which I didn't even get all the way through because, a few chapters in I was back on the go. So yeah, just constantly, you've just got to decide to get through it and to find something and to help you with it.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Yeah? Back.
Hi, my name's Leslie. I'm a uni student studying at the Australian Institute of Music, and I just wanted to come to this workshop, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really, firstly, want to say I'm really loving what you guys are doing, what you women are doing.
We're not so much.
A little nervous. What you women are doing, like in the industry, and I think it's really great. I guess coming from me as a guy, it's great to see more women becoming active in different positions and different roles in the industry. As a student, just kind of looking from the outside in, I'm kind of just trying to sort of carve my way or sort of explore my path into the music industry. I'm actually a singer-songwriter, primarily an artist. I wrote this down because I didn't want to stuff it up. I just wanted to ask, this is just a general question regarding probably in the near future. How can independent artists, including unsigned artists, strike a balance of gaining creative control and attaining major distribution for their work?
We're looking at Christy.
Well, first of all, I think you should just totally abolish the idea that there's independent artists and unsigned artists. It doesn't matter. You've got Triple J Unearthed. There's actually and you've got the internet. There's nothing stopping you from putting your music up there. If you have $2,000, you can put your music up there, pay a PR company, and they'll service it around the world. So I don't know. I really just think that people's attitude towards it, you could totally do it yourself. Don't wait to be signed to think that your music is going to get out there and be heard. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And if you don't have the $2,000, as KLP mentioned before, there are so many distribution companies like TuneCorn, Ninja Tune. There are so many different ones that you can sign up to, and then they'll distribute your music for you to a Spotify or an iTunes. I'd recommend looking at the people that you love. Who are the artists and songwriters that inspire you? Start following them on social media and see how they're building their conversation with their fans. Because you could write a song this afternoon and have it up on Spotify by tomorrow morning. You could have it on SoundCloud. Go out to your network and your friends and let them know, hey, I put a song up. Because who knows, it could go viral. But it's about making that start. And it's about putting your best foot forward and just making a start. I honestly believe that's where it's all about. I think, as KLP said, it's no longer about major or independent, because those barriers have been broken down by social media and the internet and streaming services, truly.
And there's Triple J Unearthed. literally, there are 5 people, it's their job to listen to every single song that is uploaded. And if you are good, they'll give you a review, and they might play your song. And if you keep making music and keep uploading better music, and they can see your progress as an artist, it's such an amazing platform. It's so great.
Never give up.
Do
Just
it
keep
today.
going. Do it today
Do
and
it
never
today.
give up.
We're going to listen tonight.
Yes.
That's great. Just before we get to the next question, while you're setting up, I just want to point out we have some great people in the audience. You're all great, but the ones that I personally know, I just want to point out we've got Peter here and Gabriel from a group called Peter and the Wolves. Peter is incredible. She's been living in Sweden. Gabriel's actually from Stockholm, and they just released a single last week, Equal Measure. Gabriel's an incredible producer. Peter is a fantastic singer, and it's so great to have you here today. And I just want to plug their music. Look them up, Peter, and like ampersand, The Wolves. And yeah, listen to that song. And thank you for coming today. I also, like I said, we have a podcast, and the latest one is of 4 young women under 30 who are in different areas of music, who are right at that point of like crossing over into like, I'm going to take this seriously. And there's Ruby May. She's sitting there with a little red, beautiful, what is it, like bandana thing. She's an electro-pop artist. And we've got Frances Madden, who is an incredible jazz singer who knows how to fill a room. Her marketing and branding is amazing. Ella Masons is from the National Women's Composers Development Program, which is such a, at the Conservatorium, and we have this podcast out where they all talk about like the struggles and everything that we're talking about, but like starting out or, going from university into building a career. So that's incredible. So thank you so much for coming. And Tony Bird as well, I just want to point her out. She's an artist who makes a lot of money with a music day job. I call music day jobs when you do the opera bar or you do lobbies in a hotel, but she's actually really loves rock and roll. And I think that's so cool because we need more rock, but maybe I'm old, I don't know, I love rock. I don't know if it's, but she's about to do a rock album, which is cool. So anyway, thank you everyone who's here. I really appreciate you being here, but I just wanted to point out those women as well. Question?
Firstly, to say this is an incredibly inspiring event. Thank you so much for organising it and all the wisdom that's coming out of it. And to get musicians out of bed before midday is extraordinary. It worked, didn't it? This is a question to all of you. Rita in particular, I remember I'm a jazz piano player. My mum was a pianist, and in my early 20s, she pushed me to this workshop at University of New South Wales for piano teachers.
Oh, God.
Which I know, yep, I've seen you before. And I remember a few words of wisdom that you had, which although I didn't get formal teaching qualifications, I chose to work for Yamaha, who trained me internally.
Yeah. Wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I remember a statement you made, which is rhythm is better caught than taught, or rhythm is more easily caught than taught.
Did I say that? God, that's profound.
I could be making things up. It was also early in the morning. So,
yeah.
My question to you is, I've been working as a jazz pianist and teaching, and in particular teaching people who are already playing somewhat and want to learn to improvise. And I've written a repertoire of jazz pieces, which I have in the form of sheet music and aiming to do as recordings as well, which have been used for, as well as enjoyment, which is my main aim of teaching and music, and a whole lot of other good reasons, expression. It's also been used for school performances and extra works on AMEV lists, and wondering how to get it to a level where it's more available and able to publish it in an effective way.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? You can self-publish. Is this working? You can actually self-publish, which is probably what most people are doing these days. Again, the internet and some of the YouTube particularly, if you're on there playing, teachers will pick that up and they'll say, oh yeah, I like that, I'll have that for for my own students. It's difficult. It's a difficult thing to do. But I'd suggest self-publishing. Quite a few of the composers now, and quite a lot of them that I know personally, do self-publish. But you go around the publishers, the music publishers first. Like, well, Alan's is no longer with us. Amy B's doing their own publishing. You could even use my name. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but anyhow. And who else does?
Music sales?
Music sales. Who's got music sales now?
It's a German company, isn't it?
Yes, still.
Or English company? I can't recall.
EMI.
Is it
EMI, I think it's still. So go for. It's another one. Send me after, because there's another couple that I just can't think of the name of. And yes, it's difficult, but probably if you've got a good music program, Sibelius is probably, this is the one Amy B uses anyhow. If you can publish yourself, and then we can get it out there. We can get it out there for you.
Lovely.
I think we can, yes. That's the way to do it. We let the teachers know about it at the various courses that I still run. Yeah. That's really good that you do that. Excellent. Were you at one of those courses of mine, or did you say it was your mother?
I beg pardon?
Were you at one of those courses that I was doing, or was it your mother, did you say?
My mum
Your mum.
was, also, and I have to say very profound thank you for sharing the loss of a parent. My mum was a teacher and also passed away 5 years ago, and it has, all the time I've wanted to bring compositions out, and I get so much joy from people who say, I've never been able to improvise, I'm too scared to perform on all this, and formalising now, it's almost as if my mum's here.
Directing you.
Guiding me with it.
Yes,
So my
yes,
mum
yes.
encouraged me to go to your workshop.
Okay.
Along
That's
with
lovely.
That, interacting with other people.
Thank you so much. That's lovely.
The other, sorry, I'm sorry, I just thought of it. We're a Pang. I'm actually on their board. They will publish for you if they think it's good enough. So we'll talk about that if you like after.
We have time for one more question, because we do have one more performance as well. So, sorry.
Earlier, I heard Vicki talking a little bit briefly about being inclusive, the importance of being inclusive in the music industry. What are the things that we should do in order to make the music industry more inclusive?
Thanks. That's a great question. Look, I think all of us have a different role to play, and many of you in the room are musicians and songwriters and creative artists, and there are those of us that are activists and troublemakers, who obviously are very important in the industry if we really want to create change, real change, not tokenistic change. So I'm really thrilled to see so many men in the room, I have to say. I'd like to acknowledge that.
Yes, so much.
And I'm really thrilled to see so many people of colour in the room as well. And obviously I know that our LGBTQI people are in the room as well. So I guess the most important thing in creating any sort of change in the world is about getting organised and actually finding other people who share similar vision and a similar mission and capacity to articulate what the change needs to be, but also to, I think, have the commitment to create change. So inclusivity is very important in our music industry, and it's not something actually that the Australian music industry has ever been good at. And I just wanted to raise something about one of the big challenges that are happening at the moment in music festivals all around the world, which is really impacting on female musicians, is that female artists are being denied capacity to perform on major festival stages all over the world, and we're seeing a diminishment of this. And obviously when we're seeing women being diminished, we're obviously also seeing our Indigenous brothers and sisters being diminished, because that sort of falls away as well. And most of you will know that there was an electronica music festival programmed in Sydney about 2 months ago with 30 acts programmed and no women, not one woman. But what I would say to all of you is that I spend a lot of time working in that world of research and statistics, and we need to share that information with one another. Information is power, and the more that we actually understand about the areas where inclusivity is not a part of our industry, and the more organised we become as a community, I think the more impact we can have for change, which is badly, badly needed. And I'll just end by saying that I had a conversation with a corporate research company who I won't mention in Queensland just a little while ago, and when they looked at the current statistics that we have in relation to women in the music industry, they said to me that they believe the Australian music industry is worse than the mining industry when it comes to gender and cultural equity.
Wow.
So we have a long way to go, and a lot of people are not informed about the status and what it looks like, and a lot of people think it is a lot better than it is. But it was a great question, thank you. And if there is anyone in the room who is very committed to furthering this conversation, please come and see me. I'm always looking for people who want to get on board with trying to make our music community a much better place.
Thank you so much, Vicki. What a great note to end on. Why don't you thank our panellists? Thank you so much for everything. And you've got a little gift under your chair. And if the card doesn't match up to your name, just find the one with your card in it. Because I wasn't as organised. I'd like to introduce Sophie Coe now. Thank you. Sophie Coe has come up from Melbourne today. She won Triple J Unearthed in 2003 and is still making music independently. Her latest album, that's your present under there, I do know that. Her latest album is called Book of Songs, and it was only released like 6 weeks ago, was it? 8? Yeah. Good. And released independently, and it's a beautiful album, so please look up Sophie Coe. Thank you so much for being here, Sophie.
Thank you.
I wish we could have put you on the panel. We had a limit on chairs on the stage, but she would have provided so much insight as well. Okay, you're going to perform a song for us today. What is it?
Yes, it's off my album. First of all, thank you. And this is my 4th independent album. I can't believe that I'm still here after 15 years putting out music. So thank you. But I've completely changed tack. Like I said, you know, I was actually started off winning a TV competition before Idol. It was called Starstruck. I don't know anyone over 30. Jo Beth Taylor was the host, and I won some money on that, and it led me on to doing some music, and then went on Triple J and won that when I was living in the NT in Darwin. They were unearthing by states 15 years ago, and so that led me on to that. But since then, I've been very much independent and changed tack. So my new album is a classical pop album of songs inspired by Chinese poetry and Chinese art, but played as a piano trio, a classical piano trio, grand piano, cello, viola, and some clarinet. So you have to imagine that while I'm playing this, because it's just half the song really, but still very much pop-centric. And I've moved away from the indie pop, electronic synth stuff that I was doing. So this one's called Paper Kites, and it's about my grandmother's Chinese funeral, seeing all the gold joss paper flying into the air.
So it feels like summer days are over. I'm coming up to see you, honey, take you to the moon. Fire of flowers, dust and full of wonder. I'm coming up to see you, honey, I won't be too late.
That was wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming out here so early and in the rain and on a long weekend. And please make sure that you subscribe to musiclove.com.au. And we had our hashtag and our, what is it called? The @ thing? The handle. And I really believe that, if you have any music or you work in the industry or you're an independent artist, we'll take all submissions. We'd love to profile women in the industry. And I really believe as we hold up that mirror to Australia, they'll be able to see, exactly all the women. And like Vicki said, it is about organising and showing ourselves off. So please don't be shy. Email hello@musiclove.com.au. Subscribe to our newsletter. We'll be doing more events as well. So we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.